All right, so if you need to see the full-size image of what I'm presenting, you should be able to just double-click or tap the screen. And one of the things that I always tell students, regardless of where you are or how well you know this stuff, it's always about practice, practice, practice. The more you practice, the better you get at it. And it's about practicing the how you're setting these problems up. That's more important than memorizing the answer when it comes to these things. So make sure you're taking the time to work through these problems. And then, because the only thing that they're going to do that's different than what these practice sets show is they're going to use different numbers. Okay. And so as long as you understand how you arrived at your answer and you can mimic that given a different number, then you have all you need, the strategy you need to kind of be successful with this. When I present and show the different things, I can tell you that my goal is to use dimensional analysis just because, not because that's the end all be all, but because it's just very uniform and organized when I write it out. There are a multitude of ways to answer these questions. You choose the way that is best for you. We will go until 11:45, and then if you don't know already, I will be doing this review for you guys tomorrow, like around 1 o'clock on Wednesday, and then 4:30 again on Thursday. And then we'll just see. As long as people keep arriving, then I will continue to offer the times to do these reviews. And if there's a time you can't attend and you have a burning question, please just message me, and we'll make sure that you get your questions answered. So I had a bunch of paper that disappeared from me. So let me see if there's scrap paper. Here we go. All right. So what I was going over last time was just some of the basic conversion questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to jump to something different. And then we could always come back to those because there's plenty of review sessions. I am going to save these output questions for another time, just because I want to focus on the things that are going to be the majority of the test, but I will show you how to do these things. They're not difficult. It's just that they just require a little bit more explanation. So I want to focus more on like how you're reading the labels and what the labels look like and what to look for on there. Some of you may already feel pretty good about that. Some of you, this is your first time seeing some of this stuff. So a lot of times I keep these very simple when these are made, just because a lot of times it's going to be simple for you as well. It's just, can you read the information? So a couple things. When it says your patient receives 500 milligrams, that 500 milligrams is your order. Okay. So your order is what has been prescribed by the doctor. PO means per oral or by mouth, and BID means twice per day. Okay. So you'll see things like TID, which means 3 times a day. You might see Q12H, which means every 12 hours. There's a variety of ways in which the twice a day can be, or at least the things that are telling you how often to give the dose can be arranged. You might see Q4H, Q3H for different things. And what's helpful is knowing those numbers for if they ever ask you like how many capsules would you administer in a day. Sometimes they will ask you that question, but usually they just want to know how many per dose. So a lot of times it's just that one time. Okay. Now this is the classic. If you have been learned, or if you've learned like ordered over available or desired over have, this works perfectly in that manner. You take your order over your available. Now, sometimes, believe it or not, you can struggle with where to find the available information. The available information should always be listed very plainly on the label. Okay, So you can see that the label is for cephalexin. It tells you that there's 100 capsules and that each capsule is 250 milligrams, okay? There's some other information on here that you don't need to worry about too much, like the NDC number. You really don't need to worry about that. That's more for inventory purposes, okay? Now, one of the things that students typically, especially nursing students, tend to forget exists is this thing called the quantity. You always need to make sure you're paying attention to the quantity. A lot of times, and most of the time, it's just one, okay? But sometimes it'll be per 5 ml or 2.5 ml or 2 ml. You need to make sure you are multiplying because that's a commonly missed thing. And I'll show you an example of that where that gets thrown off. So you really don't even need to do much math on this. 2 capsules. Most of you got that just by looking at it. They do want you to show your work. Probably not so well. I guess you're going to have scratch paper on what's it called, the Blackboard version of the test. So they may want you to at least show your work, but a lot of it is they just want you to make sure you're writing it down and not just memorizing it. So just make sure you write something down when you're putting those answers together. Okay. Now, if you're doing this dimensional analysis wise, I like to start off with the order. You put it over 1 if you want to. Change my mark. 9. And then I would say, I want to get rid of milligrams and I want to convert that to capsules. 1 capsule is 250 milligrams. And then we're going to get 2 capsules. So there's 2 ways to get an answer. And you can do that. So I just want you guys to know, like, so this Sharpie, like I could barely read the writing on there versus this Sharpie, very easy to read, but this is the one that's dead and I need to throw away. And this is the one that has this funny. So anyways, that's why I was using the dead one because I thought that was not the dead one.
So you wouldn't then multiply it by twice because it's twice per day?
So good question. You would only multiply it 2 times if it asked you specifically how many to give in a day. But if it's only per dose, you only calculate the per dose time. Does that make sense?
So if it doesn't say per day, then we just assume it's the dose. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good question. Yeah, so most of the time it's just per dose because if you think about it, put yourself in the situation, you finish nursing school, you're in, you're at the hospital setting and maybe you're working a 10-hour shift. If you are giving them their first dose, you're probably not going to be there for the second dose if it's every 12 hours, right? So you do need to know it both ways. But usually on the dosage calc test, they're just asking you, can you calculate the per dose unless it specifically asks you per day? So if this had the how many capsules will the patient receive per day, then yes, multiply by 2, and then you would give 4 capsules per day. It's a great question. All right, so let's look at some of these other things here. I want to do another oral-based med, and we'll come back to some of the liquids. All right, so this question right here, and then I had a couple students ask me about this question because they're asking about the half, because this is one of the ones where they're going to give you half. But sometimes they won't give you a label. Sometimes they'll just tell you this is what you have available. Okay. So for this one, if I'm writing this out, and I'm doing ordered over available, I'm going to write 2.5 milligrams over my available, which is 5, times my 1, and it's a tablet. Now, something you should know about tablets, typically tablets are considered scored, meaning that a tablet might look like this, and it has like a dividing line in the middle, so it could be cut in half. Sometimes it can be quartered. It just depends. Capsules can't be cut because if you've ever opened up a capsule, there's like a bunch of little like beads inside. That's the medication or the combination of meds. And so you can't like give somebody exactly half of a capsule, okay? You might be close enough and maybe it doesn't matter depending on the medication type, but like the difference between tablets and capsules is that you can cut a tablet in half, but you cannot give someone a half a capsule, okay? So when we do 2.5 and we divide it by 5, we actually get 0.5 tablets. That's what you want to write or type in on the Blackboard test, the 0.5. But if you are on a paper test, they want you to write 1/2 tablet. If it's me and I'm taking a paper test and I'm not quite sure because I either forgot to ask or just forgot, it's probably fine to write both. That I think they just want to make sure you understand that it can be represented both ways. But it'll tell you like on the current practice test on Blackboard, it'll tell you to use 0.5 or 0.5 instead of half. But they might tell you otherwise when you're taking your test. So please just pay attention to what they're asking you to do on the test. All right, I just want to see if there's other, here we go. Excuse me. All right, so there's 2 more meds here that we'll talk about. And I just want to tackle these because these are usually the ones that there's a lot of that are like, I don't want to say easy, but they're easier because there's something you're familiar with. I think all of us have taken, you know, Tylenol or an antibiotic or something like that at some point in our lives, or at least have a concept of what that is if you have it. And so when we put our minds into like, okay, this is just how the patient's receiving the med, it usually helps to kind of simplify the complexity that might be associated with this. So let's look at this first one, this digoxin, okay, or digoxin, which is the brand name for Lanoxin. At least that's what we're assuming, because typically we want the label and the name to be the same. But hopefully it still works. Hopefully it's still the same drug. So it gives you an order of 0.75 milligrams, and then it wants to know how many tablets to administer. And so we have to look at our label. And our label has a couple of things listed on that. So we're assuming that Lanoxin and digoxin are the same medication. So don't get hung up on that. This is not one of the, when you do pediatrics 3rd semester, that's the one where they'll say like, well, if this is the wrong range or if this is the wrong medication, then you need to, you know, not give the medication and call the physician. So we have in our box here of the med available, we can see that we have 2 things listed there, 250 micrograms, and then we also have listed 0.25 milligrams. When they do that, and they will do that on a variety of medications, it's because sometimes the order will be in micrograms and sometimes the order will be in milligrams. So what they're doing is they're giving you the equivalent microgram, milligram. So you would use, because the order is in milligrams, you're going to use the milligram quantity or available quantity, okay? Or not quantity, the available. If they gave it to you in micrograms, then you would use the microgram dosage, okay? So that's how you decipher it. So you don't use both these numbers. It's very common that students will try and incorporate both numbers just because it's confusing the first couple times you look at these labels. And how are you supposed to know that that's what they decided to do, okay? Sometimes they'll have different things. Sometimes they'll just have it as 250 micrograms, and then you have to convert micrograms to milligrams or milligrams to micrograms. Or they'll just have milligrams and the order will be in micrograms. So you do need to have some flexibility with doing that. Like when we get down to number 21, the order's in grams, but the available is in milligrams. So we'll talk about that differential as well in just a moment. All right. So setting this up, again, using dimensional analysis, I'm going to take 0.75 milligrams. I'm going to put it over my available, which is 0.25 milligrams, and then multiply by my quantity of 1 tablet. And I'm just going to abbreviate that tab. Now, because this is a tablet, this person or this medication could be delivered in a half tablet form. Okay, so that is possible to receive it in a half tablet form if it did that. This one in particular is not. Okay, we just put 0.75 divided by 0.25 and we get 3 tablets. The thing that I want you to pay attention to is the units of the available and the order need to be the same. And if they're not the same, then you can't do the math, okay? Meaning, let's say you wrote out 0.75 milligrams over 250 micrograms. If you write that and you do 0.75 divided by 250, first of all, you're going to get a number that's really, really small, less like 0.00 something. So it's going to be a very small number. So that automatically should clue you in that like, wait, I can't give somebody like a piece of a tablet. You know, I can give them a half a tablet, maybe a quarter of a tablet, but not like a hundredth of a tablet. Okay. But when you have milligrams and micrograms, you have to convert one or the other so that they're in the same units. They have to be the same. So when you see that, don't do that. The reason I bring that up is because not only do I do these review sessions with you, I also do the remediation. And so I know that these are commonly missed things because you zoom through the test, you get done in record time because that was super easy. And then it comes back and then you have to remediate because you goofed up on a couple things. So this is my call to you to take your time, double, triple, quadruple check, use that whole time because you don't want to have to remediate and think about this again. Just get it done and out of the way and move on to the next thing. I want to give you an alternative to this question. And then I want you to give me the answer. Just type it into the chat. So let's say the order was for 500 micrograms. So I'm using the same label. And I want to know how many tablets if it was 500 micrograms. So if you can, just type it into the chat and then I'll verify or I'll tell you the answer if it's not. Okay. All right, so I do want to ask, just know, like, if I call your name, this is not a, you know, you did something wrong or it's more about learning so you don't make these mistakes. But Nancy, can you walk me through how you got to 2.5? Or you could even type in what numbers you used. Or you don't have to answer, it's okay. All right, so
If
let
I
me,
if I
go ahead.
can, it looks like it says 200 micrograms. So I'm wondering if she's just reading it incorrectly. Because that
Okay.
would be 2.5.
Okay, not a problem. But yes, it is 2. And so all you would do here is take the 500 micrograms over 250 micrograms, and then you would just get 2. Now, the reason I like I said, I'm not trying to call you out, Nancy, or anybody else, that like when you answer something, and if you answer it differently than what's the correct answer, I want to just make sure that we don't make mistakes. Or if it, like Bertie mentioned, if it looks like I wrote 200 or 500 or 300 or whatever, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. Okay, so that's fine. Yeah, so if it's 500 micrograms, you would do 500 micrograms over 250 micrograms, and that would be your answer. All right, this one. So one of the things I'm going to do is, so my order is 0.8 grams. My available is 400 milligrams. Okay. Now you might see, like, it's hard to see, like, I don't know how well you can see this, but you have access to this set on Blackboard, but it says 60 tablets. Okay. It's always still 400 milligrams per tablet. So that does not change. Okay. There's no, it doesn't mean 400 milligrams, or that there's, 400 milligrams, 60 tablets. That's just the total bottle count. It usually doesn't trip too many people up, but sometimes I've seen some interesting attempts at answering some of these questions, and it just gets overcomplicated. All right, now, because the availables in milligrams and the orders in grams, we can't use those two numbers together, okay? So one of the things that I will do is I'll just go ahead and convert grams to milligrams firsthand. For me, and maybe for you as well, I just move the decimal over 3 places and I get 800 milligrams. If you are not there yet, you could take your 0.8 grams, you put that over 1, and we're going to convert grams to milligrams, and you have to know that 1 gram is 1,000 milligrams. When I do that, I get the same answer. Once I have 800 milligrams, then I can do my order over available. So 800 over 400 times 1 tablet. And then we're going to get 2 tablets again. You're going to find that a lot of answers get repeated. It's just that the numbers are different. Okay. Now, could you give somebody a half of a Tagamet? Yes, you can give them half because it's a tablet. Okay. PO, remember that means by mouth per oral. QID actually means 4 times per day. Okay. So if I were going to give this, if I wanted to know how many tablets will the patient receive daily, what would that be? So if it's 4 times daily and it's 2 tablets per dose, 4 times 2, then yep, you got it, Nancy, 8 tablets. Perfect. Good job. All right, I just want to look at some of the other questions here. I think most of the other ones are going to be the liquid meds. All right, so let's look at some of the liquid meds. So I'm going to go back a couple pages. And I'm going to start with this V-Silin K question. So the difference between oral tablet capsule meds and oral liquid-based meds is that it's liquid, meaning that you're going to be looking for milliliters and you're going to have milliliters listed on your label. Okay. So in order to calculate capsules, you have to have capsules somewhere on the label where they're available. To tablets, same thing. And then if we're calculating some sort of volume, you need milliliters, or you need teaspoons or tablespoons, ounces. You need some liquid measure in order to know what you're looking for. So with this V-Silin K suspension, it says 150 milligrams PO, which is by mouth. Again, QID, so 4 times a day. And it wants to know how many milliliters per dose. So here it told you specifically per dose. If it doesn't tell you, it's per dose. And then if it specifically says per day, then you calculate per day. So my order is 150 milligrams. My available is, now I have to look at the label. Now it's hard to see this, but it says 125 milligrams. Then it says in parentheses, 200,000 units. What that means is that there's two measurements there. So the 125 milligrams is the same thing as the 200,000 units. And all you need to know about that is if the visa and K suspension was ordered, like let's say they ordered 300,000 units, then you would use the 200,000 units in the parentheses. So you don't need to use that because it doesn't give it to you. So you could just ignore it, okay? Don't multiply anything. The parentheses just in this context on the label just means it's the alternative unit of measurement for that particular medication. But the other thing you have to pay attention to is it does say per 5 ml. So it's like really tiny in there, so you may not see it. So this is what I was talking about with like the quantity thing. You have your available is 125 milligrams. And then where a lot of students go wrong is they put 1 here when they're supposed to put 5. Okay, if you don't put that 5 there, your answer is going to be wrong. It's going to look like it could be okay. So if I take my calculator and I do 125 or 150 over 125, you get 1.2, which is like, okay, you know, I could give someone 1.2 milliliters. That seems fine. That is a very small amount because if you think about 5 milliliters as a teaspoon, so we're talking about 1/5 of a teaspoon. So it's going to be very, very small. But the correct answer is when you multiply it by 5, then you get the actual answer that they're looking for, which is 6 milliliters. Again, still really, really small. So my assumption is that this is not a true order because that just seems so small. Most likely it would be a bigger order. However, saying that, this could also be for a toddler or an infant, and maybe that is what it's supposed to be, and they would just use like an oral syringe and just squirt it in their mouth and they would consume it. So we'll continue on with some of these other questions as we go along. If you haven't started practicing, just go through the practice set. Go through the online version, and you'll get some feedback. If you don't do well on the online version, let me know. So I should be able to kind of review it on my end and just see if there's anything you may have missed because of just the way you inputted your answer. So your answer might be correct, but you may have, did a leading or lagging 0, or you may have included the units when it tells you not to. And if that happens, just let me know, or let me know if like you end up getting like, 15 out of 25, or I think it's 27 questions. You probably didn't miss that many questions. Okay. And you can let me know if you didn't figure it out already, because I think you can pull it up and actually review those things. So, all right. So I told Amina earlier, but she's not back on, or they're not back on, that I have another class at noon. But I appreciate you coming and attending and asking and answering some of my questions. I will be doing this again tomorrow at 1 o'clock. And then again on Thursday at 4:30, and then we'll do the same cycle, I think, next week as well, with Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So again, if you have questions, feel free to email me. You can connect to me via Blackboard site, and then I will upload this video onto my YouTube channel for you to review later on. So I'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.